Front, the back is going to be some review. It will look very similar to what your assessment will be next week. So we're talking about sketching angles. So we're still in the first section. We're going kind of slow, but that's okay. But when we are sketching angles, we are always going to start here. Oops, that's a bad line, but this is called our initial side. So that's always where we're starting. Initial is the start. Then we are always going to move in this direction if your angle is positive. So you start on your initial side, you're going to start to rotate around. What's that, counterclockwise? You're going to mix it up. If you have a positive angle, each quadrant is 90 degrees. So in this first quadrant, we call this the first quadrant. We're going to call it quadrant 1. Are all angles between 0 degrees and 90 degrees. In quadrant 2, or sorry, quad, that's between 90 and 180. Quadrant 3 is between 180 and 270. And last but not least is quadrant 4, and that's between 270 and 360. So when we say sketch, we're not being like super exact. You can just give me a general idea of where something would be. Once again, we start on the initial side. You'll kind of see once I actually do a problem. If it's positive, you go counterclockwise. If it was a negative angle, you go in the opposite direction. So we'll see what that actually looks like in a second. And then we're going to talk about things called coterminal angles, which are pretty easy to find once you have the quick little formula. So that's the general setup of our quadrants. Quad means split into 4. So our main goal is we're just going to do quick little sketches, nothing too exact. You don't need any fancy angle things. And we'll go from there. So I'll give you a second to be writing that. Oh, it's already hot in here. Not really just 3 of you, so you guys are good. So then the next, oh my God, this is going to be the death of me today. The next thing, or just like a quick note right here, it says finding a coterminal angle. I'll show you what that actually means in a second. But I'll give you the quick little formula. To find a coterminal angle, we're going to take the angle. We're going to represent an angle with, we call this a theta. This just represents an angle. So you'll see me do a lot of thetas throughout the year. But anytime you see that symbol, it's a Greek letter. It just means an angle. If you take your angle and you either add or subtract 360 degrees, that's going to give you a coterminal. And we'll talk about that, what that means once I actually do a problem. So let's look at what an actual problem looks like, but you can see they're kind of right below here. So I say sketch the following angles. Okay, so basically we just need to know where to start. I'm starting on my initial side. How to rotate, it's positive, so I'm gonna go counterclockwise. I always think kind of just I go up. And 48 degrees, and if I think about my quadrants, would be in the first quadrant. I'm just gonna guess 48 degrees is about, if I start here, it's about right there. So we draw a ray, we talked about that the other day. So we would say the angle from here to here is 48 degrees. And that's all you have to do. So it's really just, the main thing is that you find the right quadrant. As long as you do that, you're fine. I'm not actually gonna measure that that's correct. Now it asks for coterminal angles. So what a coterminal means is an angle that has the same terminal side. We call that the terminal side. So if you think about what we said for coterminals, we add or subtract 360. If I started at this angle and I went around 360 degrees, that just means one rotation, I end up at the same spot. So I end up with the same angle. Same thing if I went the opposite way. If I went this way 360, I get the same angle. the same terminal side. So if I ask you for coterminals, all you're gonna do, I just do it quickly in my calculator, is I do 48 degrees plus 360, and I do 48 degrees minus 360. So I just do it in my calculator, something like that. That gives me 408 degrees. You can have angles above 360, that's perfectly fine. And you can have angles below 0, you can have negative. So basically I'm saying if I give you either of those angles, that terminal side will look exactly the same. So it would actually look like the same angle, it's just different number of rotations. Already hot and I'm always reading. Question, Danny, it's National Coffee Day, but that doesn't look like coffee.
Yeah, it's dragon fruit refreshing. It's pretty good.
Did you get it for free?
Yeah, they get it too.
Oh, so they like don't discriminate if you don't like coffee.
Well, I like coffee. I just wanted that, and they thought I was cute, so just average anything.
What can you do? You know what I'm saying? Hey guys, can you just grab a worksheet right now? We're just doing a few problems to start, and then we're gonna do some review. I was just wondering if everything was free or just coffee. I'm not a coffee drinker. Okay, so the next one, 170. So I start on my initial side. Basically, I just kind of like put my pen or pencil here. I'm gonna start rotating around until I think I'm about at 170. So if I start rotating, okay, I know that's 90. I don't wanna go all the way to 180 because that would be too much. So I'm gonna say it's about right there. It doesn't have to be perfect. From that, you draw a ray. So you just draw a line in one direction. I don't want to go all the way to 180. I mean, yours could look a little different as long as it's in that quadrant, you good. Then to find the coterminals, once again, if I just went around in a circle, I'd end up at the same spot. So to find them, I'm going to take my original angle, and I'm going to add 360. And since I want to find two of them, I'll also subtract 360. So I just throw that in my calculator quick to find my coterminals. That gives me what, 530. Make sure all of your answers do have degree symbols. And negative 190. That's in my bottom. So first step, what quadrant am I in? I'm just doing a quick estimate where it would be. It doesn't have to be anything perfect. I should label it. I should put right here that was 170, just to be a little bit more exact. And then to find the coterminals, once again, you're taking your angle. We call that theta. It's just a general idea. And we're either going to add or subtract 360. You can see I'm doing adding and subtracting to find two. One more, then we'll kind of look at that bottom row. But this was really the only new thing for today. So 299. I start on my initial side, which is right here. I start to rotate around. So I kind of go by the quadrants, 90, 180. So it's gonna be in the third quadrant because it's between, no it's not, that's wrong. Okay, never mind, 270. It's gonna be in the fourth quadrant because it's between 270 and 360. Just estimate, I'm gonna just throw it right there. It doesn't have to be too exact. The main thing I'm looking for is it in the right quadrant. So you draw that ray. And then to find the coterminals, you take your original angle, and you add 360, and you can also subtract 360. Once again, your calculator will be your friend in this class. Please have one. Please get one if you do not have one yet. So I'll leave that up for a second because I know people came in. But if you did just come in, so we're always measuring angles from this side. This is called our initial side. If it's positive, it kind of makes sense you start by going up. And we know each quadrant is 90, so you're just kind of figuring out in general where that would be. It doesn't have to be perfect. You draw a ray in that direction. And then for the coterminals, you're just taking your original and either adding or subtracting 360. So I'll leave that up just for a second there. We'll look at those bottom few. units. Okay. Whew. I'll leave that up for about 1 more minute. Okay, I'm gonna move down. So, on the bottom, okay, nothing really too exciting. I'm gonna see originals. What I do see is some negatives, so we just wanna make sure we know what that looks like. And I see something over 360, so I just wanna make sure you know what that looks like as well. So when I'm doing the negative, always start here, this is your kind of positive X is your initial. When it says negative, instead of going up, we're just gonna go down. Kind of makes sense? So if I go down 12 degrees, it's just a few degrees, I'm just gonna say that's about right there. So I went in the down direction instead of in the up, because it's negative. About 12 degrees, once again, that's not perfect, I'm just looking for the right quadrant. And then, to find the coterminals, I could add 360 and subtract 360. From now on, I'll kind of just do this in my calculator because it's pretty quick. It's just knowing what to add or subtract. But 360 makes sense because that's just one rotation around. Oh, what did I do here? That's negative 372. Please just make sure all your angles do have degree symbols. Okay, so negative, instead of going up, you go down. That makes sense. For 430, so you kind of start as positive, so we start and say, okay, 90, 180, 270. I already went around once, and that's okay. You can kind of just keep going until you get where you need. So, what is it? So it's gonna be about right here. So what I like to do, because I always visualize things between 0 and 360, that just makes sense in my head. Like I can pretty much visualize where that is. If from here, it's good to find that coterminal. So think about it, if I do 430, that means I had to rotate around once, plus I had a little extra. If I take that one rotation away, that gives me 70 degrees. I should be able to visualize where 70 is. So all that means is we had one rotation around, and then I added 70 more degrees, and that gives me my 430. So one of my coterminals is 70. You can add or subtract 360 as many times as you want. So you can keep subtracting 360, you can keep adding 360, whatever works. So let's say I wanted a negative. I could take that 70 and I'm going to subtract 360 from that as well. If you added 360 to it, great. They're all right. You can do add or subtract 360 as many times as you please. Because all it means is you're just rotating once around, but you're still going to have the same angle. So last but not least on the front here, negative 300. So I start on my initial side. I'm going to go down because that's a negative direction. So if I go down, that's negative 90, 180, 270. So negative 300 would be, I don't know, up there somewhere. To find coterminals, I'll do this right in my calculator. Negative 300 plus 360. One of the coterminals is 60 degrees. That kind of makes sense because from here to here should be 60. If I went the other way, that's negative 300. You can also do negative 300 minus 360. That's negative 660. We sketch angles a lot. It's something that once we get into triangles, you have to actually make them. And you make them by sketching angles and then finding the sides. So just as we're continuing, if you're seeing something you're not getting, please ask. We find coterminals a lot too. But once again, have that calculator handy because it's just adding or subtracting 360. Okay, so that was kind of the stuff we had to finish up from our first section. We've been working on it a while, but there's a lot in it, and it's a lot that we use. So I wanted to make sure we had a little extra time and weren't rushing ourselves. So on the back, I'm just gonna put this down so I don't have to erase everything. Are just some review problems. So you could see complement and supplement, so you should have 2 answers for 7 through 11. One of the pairs adds to 90, one adds to 180. These are the ones we were talking about, the angle measures, whether they were complementary or supplementary, so finding that x and then plugging it back in. Adding and subtracting degrees, minutes, seconds. And then the stuff we were doing yesterday with converting. So you guys can decide, because you're my first trig class, so you got the opportunity to be the voice of all the trig classes. We are gonna have an assessment next week. So here are your 2 options. Your assessment will be Monday, and you can use notes. Or your assessment will be Tuesday. We would review Monday, but you will not be able to use notes.
Monday, 100%.
On Monday? Okay, you can use notes. Okay. So on Monday, I will remind you, like on Friday, you'll probably have like a little review again, just to make sure everything is fresh in your head. Please come in. Please make sure you have your material coming to take an assessment. And there's notes if you don't have them. It's just a sad day, so please make sure you have that. It's nothing gonna make you crazy. There'll probably be a few multiple choice. You just you're kind of answering pretty similar to the back of that paper. So we'll take that. So our main goal is we want to get a few assessments in. Once again, I have no clue what the term ends. They could at some point be like, it ends tomorrow, and we want to make sure we have some grades in, and I'm not rushing in the end. So that will be the plan. So your plan for right now is you are working on the back of that. You're seeing what questions you have. Remember, I don't physically see you again until next Monday, and you're having an assessment. So today is the day, as you're doing the back, to ask questions, because I'm happy to help you. And then we can look at that